At this very moment, a stream of information is leaving our world. Every broadcast, every transmission, every signal humanity has ever sent is spreading across the universe at the speed of light. It feels natural to imagine those messages traveling endlessly through space, yet the cosmos contains a strange destination where that assumption fails. There are regions so profoundly disconnected from us that once a signal crosses a certain threshold, the possibility of return disappears forever. No reply can arrive, no observation can follow, no future civilization can send an answer back across the divide. The signal continues its journey, but the connection is gone. Tonight we explore one of the most fascinating discoveries in cosmology, a region of the universe where communication itself comes to an end. Earth is surrounded by an expanding shell of information. Every radio broadcast ever transmitted, every television signal sent into the atmosphere, every radar pulse reflected into space, and every message intentionally directed toward the stars is moving outward at the speed of light. Human civilization has been quietly announcing its existence to the universe for more than a century. Without realizing it, we have created a growing sphere of information that expands farther into the cosmos every second. It is tempting to imagine these signals traveling forever. After all, space appears almost empty. Once a transmission leaves Earth, there seems to be nothing standing in its way. The signal races outward, crossing the solar system, passing nearby stars, and continuing into deeper regions of the galaxy. From this perspective, communication appears limitless. The message simply keeps going. Yet, modern cosmology reveals a far stranger possibility. Every signal leaving our world may be approaching a destination that has nothing to do with planets, stars, or civilizations. It may be approaching a boundary hidden within the structure of the universe itself. To understand why, imagine throwing a bottle into a river. The bottle drifts with the current, moving farther from its point of origin. If the river remains calm and predictable, the bottle may continue traveling for a very long time. But eventually the river enters larger waters. The environment changes. New forces begin shaping the journey. The bottle is no longer simply moving away from where it started. It is being carried toward a future defined by the river itself. Signals experience something similar on cosmic scales. When a radio transmission leaves Earth, it does not travel through a static universe. It moves through a cosmos that is expanding. The space between galaxies is not fixed. Distances continuously change. The geometry of reality evolves while the signal is in motion. This means that every message humanity sends enters a universe whose structure influences its fate. For nearby destinations, this effect is insignificant. A signal can easily cross the distance between Earth and another planet. It can travel to nearby stars. It can move through local regions of the Milky Way without encountering serious obstacles. On these scales, space behaves almost like an ordinary stage through which information moves. The situation changes when the distances become truly cosmic. Beyond individual galaxies, the expansion of the universe begins to matter. The farther a signal travels, the more it enters regions where space-time itself is stretching. The path ahead is not fixed. The landscape through which information moves is changing while the journey takes place. This creates a remarkable possibility. A signal may continue traveling forever while gradually losing the ability to remain connected to its origin. The message survives. The relationship does not. Most people think of communication as a simple exchange. A message leaves one location and eventually arrives somewhere else. The process seems symmetrical. If information can travel outward, then information should be able to travel back. The universe does not always permit this symmetry. There are regions where a signal can continue moving away from Earth while the possibility of a return message slowly disappears. The signal still exists. The signal still carries information. The signal still obeys the laws of physics. Yet it enters a domain where communication becomes one-directional. This idea becomes easier to grasp when thinking about horizons. Standing on a beach, you can watch a ship sail toward the horizon. The ship remains visible for a time. Eventually it becomes smaller. Then it disappears beyond sight. The ship continues its journey, but your connection to it changes. The vessel has not ceased to exist. It has simply moved beyond the range of direct interaction. Cosmic horizons operate according to a similar principle, though on scales far greater than anything found on Earth. As signals travel outward, they move through a universe that contains limits on future communication. These limits are not physical walls, they are not barriers floating in space. They emerge naturally from the way expansion shapes the relationship between distant regions. The deeper scientists investigated the large-scale structure of the cosmos, the more they realized that information itself is affected by this process. Every signal carries a piece of its origin. A radio transmission carries evidence of the civilization that created it. A radar pulse carries information about the technology that produced it. A message sent toward another star carries traces of the world from which it came. In this sense, every signal becomes an ambassador of its source. It travels outward, carrying a record of where it began. Yet the universe does not guarantee that the connection between messenger and origin will remain intact forever. As distances increase and expansion continues, the signal moves toward regions where the possibility of future exchange becomes increasingly fragile. The most fascinating aspect of this journey is that the signal does not know its fate. A radio wave leaving Earth does not encounter warning signs. It does not reach a checkpoint where the universe announces that communication is ending. The transition happens gradually through the changing structure of space-time itself. The message keeps moving. The cosmos keeps expanding. The relationship slowly transforms. What begins as communication becomes something closer to history. A record continues traveling long after the possibility of conversation has disappeared. This realization changes the way we think about the signals humanity sends into space. They are not merely transmissions crossing empty distances. They are participants in a much larger cosmic story. Every message leaves Earth believing, in a sense, that the universe remains connected. Every message begins its journey inside a region where communication is still possible. Yet far ahead lies a future shaped by cosmic expansion, a future in which some destinations will never answer and some regions will never return what they receive. The signal continues onward regardless. It crosses stars. It crosses galaxies. It crosses immense stretches of space-time. And somewhere far ahead, beyond the scales of ordinary imagination, it approaches a hidden boundary where the nature of communication itself begins to change. A boundary that separates contact from silence. A boundary that determines whether information remains part of a shared future or drifts into a realm where no reply can ever return. Human beings rarely think about communication because it feels effortless. A message is sent and a message is received. A voice crosses a room. A signal travels between satellites. Information moves through invisible networks connecting billions of people across the planet. The process feels so natural that we seldom stop to consider how extraordinary communication actually is. Every act of communication depends upon a connection. The connection may be short or long. It may involve sound waves, radio waves, light or electrical signals, but a connection must exist. Without that connection, information has nowhere to go. Without that connection, communication becomes silent. The universe contains a boundary where this transformation occurs. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but inevitably, a boundary where contact gives way to silence. The idea sounds strange because silence is usually associated with emptiness. A silent room contains no voices. A silent radio contains no broadcast. A silent phone contains no conversation. We naturally imagine silence as the absence of activity. The cosmic version of silence is very different. Beyond the hidden boundary, activity continues. Stars continue shining. Galaxies continue evolving. Planets continue orbiting. Physical processes continue unfolding exactly as before. What disappears is not existence. What disappears is communication. This distinction is one of the most important ideas in cosmology. The universe does not need to remove a region from reality in order to remove it from contact. To understand this, imagine two islands separated by water. As long as boats can travel between them, a relationship exists. Goods are exchanged. News is exchanged. People move between communities. The islands remain connected despite the distance. Now imagine the ocean gradually widening. The islands remain where they are. The inhabitants continue living their lives. Yet the widening water eventually reaches a point where boats can no longer complete the journey. The islands still exist. The relationship does not. The universe creates something remarkably similar on cosmic scales. Throughout the observable cosmos, information travels through space in the form of light and other signals. Every observation astronomers make depends upon this movement of information. Telescopes do not physically visit distant galaxies. They receive messages from them. Every scientific observation is a conversation. The galaxy sends light. The telescope receives it. Information crosses the distance. A connection exists. The hidden boundary emerges when that connection can no longer be maintained. What makes this boundary so difficult to visualize is that it has no physical appearance. There is no wall stretching across space. No glowing edge marks its location. No structure floats in the darkness announcing its presence. An astronaut could travel through space without ever seeing it. Yet its consequences are real. The boundary exists within the relationships between regions of the universe. It is a limit created by the ability of information to travel. People assumed that communication across space was limited only by distance. A message might require more time to reach a distant location, but eventually it would arrive. The universe seemed to offer an endless stage upon which signals could move freely. Modern cosmology revealed a more complicated picture. The stage itself is changing. Space expands. Distances increase. The paths followed by signals evolve while the signals are traveling. This changes the future of communication. Imagine sending a message across a bridge. If the bridge remains stable, the message reaches the other side. Now imagine the bridge stretching while the message is crossing. The farther the message travels, the longer the bridge becomes. The message still succeeded. The stretching is too small to matter. But if the bridge continues expanding, a threshold eventually appears. The bridge grows faster than the message can cross it. The destination remains. The message continues moving. The connection fails. This is the essence of the hidden boundary between contact and silence. The universe creates situations where information can no longer complete the journey. The signal itself is not destroyed. The signal continues to exist. The relationship disappears. One of the most fascinating consequences of this process involves the future of distant galaxies. When astronomers observe galaxies billions of light years away, they are often receiving light that began its journey billions of years in the past. The information arrives because the photons started traveling under different cosmic conditions. The universe was smaller then. Distances were different then. Connections that existed in the past may not exist in the future. This means a galaxy can remain visible while simultaneously becoming unreachable in terms of future communication. We continue receiving old messages. New messages never arrive. The galaxy remains present as history. It becomes absent from conversation. That distinction reveals something profound. The hidden boundary does not separate existence from non-existence. It separates communication from isolation. The universe can continue showing us evidence of a distant region while removing the possibility of future exchange with that region. In human terms, it is similar to finding a collection of letters written long ago by someone who can no longer be contacted. The letters provide information. They preserve a connection to the past. Yet the conversation itself has ended. The universe contains countless examples of this principle. Ancient light continues reaching Earth from regions whose futures may already be forever separated from ours. The messages arrive. The relationship changes. The conversation quietly fades. Another remarkable aspect of the boundary is that it moves. Most boundaries remain fixed. A coastline occupies a specific location. A wall stays where it was built. A doorway separates one space from another in a predictable way. The cosmic boundary evolves with the universe. As expansion continues, additional regions approach the threshold where communication becomes impossible. The domain of silence grows. The network of contact changes. Reality continuously reorganizes itself into regions that can still exchange information, and regions that cannot. This process has been occurring for billions of years. Long before Earth formed, distant galaxies were already drifting toward different futures. Long before humanity developed radio technology, the universe was already shaping the ultimate fate of communication itself. The cosmos quietly creates a landscape where some conversations can continue and others cannot. A landscape where information remains the defining ingredient of connection. And this leads to an extraordinary realization. The most important feature of a signal is not how far it travels. The most important feature is whether a return remains possible. Because the moment a reply can no longer come back, communication changes into something else. It becomes a one-way journey, a message traveling outward without any possibility of response, a voice speaking into a region that can never answer. And beyond that hidden boundary lies a universe carrying countless messages farther away from their origins, deeper into a silence that grows with every passing moment of cosmic time. Imagine a signal traveling through space. They usually picture it moving through a giant empty stage. A radio transmission leaves Earth, spreads outward in all directions, and continues across the cosmos. The image seems straightforward. The signal moves, space remains still. Distance is simply something the signal crosses. For a long time, this view felt reasonable. Even after scientists discovered distant galaxies beyond the Milky Way, many still imagined the universe as a vast but largely fixed arena. Stars and galaxies moved within it, but space itself seemed passive. It was the background against which cosmic events unfolded. The 20th century changed that picture forever. Astronomers discovered something that initially appeared impossible. Distant galaxies were moving away from us. Even more surprising, the farther away a galaxy appeared, the faster it seemed to recede. This was not an isolated effect involving a few unusual objects. It was a pattern visible throughout the observable universe. At first, the discovery created confusion. Why would galaxies in every direction be moving away? Were we somehow located at the center of everything? The answer turned out to be far more remarkable. The galaxies were not fleeing from a special location. Space itself was expanding. This distinction may sound technical, but it changes the fate of every signal ever sent. To understand why, imagine drawing dots on the surface of a balloon. As the balloon inflates, every dot moves farther away from every other dot. No individual dot serves as the center of expansion. The surface itself stretches. The universe behaves in a similar way. Galaxies are carried apart because the fabric of space-time expands between them. The important consequence is that signals travel through a landscape that changes while they are moving. Imagine sending a letter across a city. If the streets remain fixed, the letter eventually arrives. The route may be long, but the destination stays where it is. Now imagine the city itself expanding while the letter is in transit. Roads lengthen, neighborhoods drift farther apart. The path continuously changes. The letter still moves. The destination still exists. The relationship between them evolves. This is what happens to information moving through the cosmos. Every radio wave, every radar pulse, every television transmission, and every message intentionally directed toward the stars travels through an expanding universe. The signal races outward at the speed of light. Meanwhile, the structure of space-time continues changing. The result is something deeply counterintuitive. The universe is not merely allowing messages to leave Earth, it is helping carry them away. At first, this sounds almost poetic rather than scientific, yet it reflects a real feature of cosmology. Expansion creates additional separation between distant regions. The farther a signal travels, the more it enters a universe whose geometry is actively reshaping the path ahead. For nearby destinations, this effect is negligible. A signal sent to the moon reaches the moon. A signal sent to Mars reaches Mars. Even signals traveling to nearby stars are only slightly affected. The distances are too small for cosmic expansion to dominate. But as the scale increases, the story changes. The signal enters regions where expansion becomes increasingly important. The path grows, the destination recedes. The universe contributes to the separation. This creates a strange situation. A signal can move exactly as physics requires, while simultaneously becoming less capable of maintaining a connection with its origin. Imagine standing on a moving walkway at an airport. If you walk forward, you make progress faster because the walkway helps you. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine the walkway moves backward while you walk forward. You still advance, but some of your effort is spent overcoming the motion beneath your feet. If the walkway becomes fast enough, progress slows dramatically. The cosmic situation is different in detail, but similar in spirit. Signals move through a universe whose large-scale structure affects their relationship with distant destinations. The farther the signal travels, the more expansion influences the future of the journey. One of the most fascinating aspects of this process is that the signal itself remains unaware. A radio wave leaving Earth does not encounter resistance. It does not slow down because the universe expands. Light continues traveling at the speed of light. The signal performs its task perfectly. What changes is the environment through which it travels. The separation between regions grows. The cosmic landscape evolves. The geometry of the journey transforms. This means that communication depends on more than the speed of the message. It depends on the behavior of the universe itself. For centuries, people assumed that communication was limited primarily by technology. Better transmitters could send stronger signals, better receivers could detect weaker messages, more advanced civilizations could communicate across greater distances. The expanding universe reveals a deeper limitation. The structure of space-time influences whether communication remains possible at all. At sufficiently large scales, the universe begins shaping the future of every message. Some signals will continue traveling through regions that remain connected. Others will enter domains where the possibility of return gradually disappears. The distinction is not created by the signal, it is created by the cosmos. Another remarkable consequence emerges when we think about the age of the universe. Every signal humanity has ever transmitted occupies only a tiny shell around Earth. Even the oldest radio broadcasts have traveled for just over a century. In cosmic terms, this is almost nothing. The Milky Way alone spans roughly 100,000 light-years. The observable universe stretches across tens of billions of light-years. Our oldest broadcasts have barely begun their journey. Yet from the moment they left Earth, they entered a universe already expanding, a universe already creating additional separation. A universe already determines which regions can remain connected and which cannot. In this sense, every signal becomes part of a larger cosmic process. The message leaves its source carrying information. The universe carries the message into a future shaped by expansion. The signal moves outward. The cosmos stretches around it. The relationship between origin and destination continuously changes. What makes this realization so profound is that it transforms communication into something larger than technology. A transmission is no longer merely a message sent from one place to another. It becomes an interaction with the structure of reality itself. Every signal participates in the evolving geometry of the universe. Every message enters a cosmos that is not standing still. Every broadcast becomes part of a journey influenced by the growth of space-time. And hidden within that journey is an extraordinary possibility. There may come a moment when a signal continues traveling perfectly, yet the universe has already carried it beyond the point where any reply could ever return. A moment when communication quietly becomes one way. A moment when the message remains alive, but the conversation has already ended. A moment that reveals just how deeply the expansion of the universe shapes the fate of every signal ever sent into the stars. Most journeys have a clear ending. A traveler reaches a destination. A package arrives at its address. A ship enters a harbor after crossing an ocean. Even when a journey fails, the failure is usually obvious. The traveler becomes lost. The vehicle breaks down. The route is blocked. There is a visible moment when success becomes impossible. The universe handles failure in a much stranger way. There are signals traveling through space right now that may already be approaching a point where communication ends forever, yet nothing dramatic will happen when they arrive. No alarm will sound, no cosmic barrier will appear, no physical wall will stop their movement. The signal will continue traveling. The signal will continue carrying information. The signal will continue obeying every law of physics. And yet something essential will have changed. The possibility of ever hearing back will be gone. This is one of the most fascinating consequences of the expanding universe. Communication does not always end because a message is destroyed. Sometimes communication ends because the relationship between sender and receiver changes in a way that can never be reversed. To understand this idea, imagine standing on a shoreline while watching a boat sail into the distance. At first, communication remained easy. You can shout, the people aboard can respond. The exchange continues because the separation is small. As the boat moves farther away, communication becomes more difficult. Voices grow weaker. Details become harder to recognize. Eventually, the boat shrinks into a tiny shape against the horizon. Now imagine that the ocean itself begins expanding while the boat sails away. The vessel continues moving. The water continues growing. The distance increases from both causes at once. There comes a point where even the possibility of future communication disappears. The boat still exists. The people still exist. The connection does not. Something similar happens to information traveling through the cosmos. When a signal leaves Earth, it begins as part of a connected relationship. The source exists. The possibility of communication exists. The signal carries information outward through space. Yet the universe is not static. The distances between remote regions continuously change. Space-time stretches. The geometry of reality evolves. The signal travels through a landscape that is slowly altering the future of the journey. At first, nothing seems unusual. The signal behaves exactly as expected. It moves outward at the speed of light. It crosses planets. It crosses stars. It moves through interstellar space. The message appears free. Then the scales become larger. The signal enters regions where cosmic expansion begins shaping the future more strongly. The separation between locations grows. The relationship between sender and destination changes. The possibility of return becomes increasingly fragile. Eventually, a threshold is crossed. This threshold is one of the strangest boundaries in cosmology because it does not affect the signal directly. The message survives. The communication does not. Imagine writing a letter and placing it on a train. The train continues moving. The letter remains intact. Yet while the letter travels, the city where it originated begins drifting away from the destination. Roads disappear. Connections vanish. The infrastructure linking the two locations slowly dissolves. The letter still exists. The route does not. This captures the essence of what happens when a signal becomes forever unreachable. The message is not lost. The shared future is lost. One of the most difficult aspects of this concept is that there is no visible marker announcing the transition. Human beings are accustomed to boundaries that occupy locations. A bridge ends at a specific place. A border appears at a specific place. A mountain range occupies a specific place. The cosmic boundary behaves differently. It is defined by possibility rather than position. The moment a signal becomes forever unreachable is not marked by a location in space. It is marked by a change in the future. Before the threshold, communication remains theoretically possible. After the threshold, it does not. The universe quietly transforms a conversation into a monologue. This distinction becomes even more fascinating when we consider the nature of light. Every observation humanity has ever made of the distant cosmos depends upon light reaching us. Galaxies become visible because photons travel enormous distances. Information arrives because the universe permits communication across space. Yet the same universe that allows communication also limits it. A photon can travel for billions of years and still reach Earth. Another photon, emitted under different conditions, may never complete the journey. The difference is not found within the photon. The difference is found within the evolving structure of space-time. The universe itself determines whether the relationship survives. This means that communication has a history, it has a beginning, it has a future, and sometimes it has an ending. The ending may occur even while the signal continues traveling. That is what makes the idea so counterintuitive. Human intuition assumes that communication ends when a message stops moving. Cosmology reveals that communication can end while the message continues forever. The signal remains alive. The conversation dies. Another remarkable consequence emerges when we think about humanity's own transmissions. For more than a century, radio broadcasts have been spreading outward from Earth. News reports, music, conversations, scientific discoveries, emergency alerts, television signals, and countless other forms of information have escaped into space. Each transmission carries a tiny fragment of human history. Each becomes a record of a specific moment. Each continues traveling through an expanding universe. Some of those signals may eventually enter regions where no reply could ever return. Not because nobody receives them, not because intelligent life is absent, because the structure of reality itself prevents the restoration of contact. The message continues. The exchange becomes impossible. This realization changes the emotional meaning of communication. A signal sent into the cosmos is not merely a message. It is a participant in a race against separation. As long as connection survives, communication remains possible. Once the threshold is crossed, the future changes permanently. The signal becomes part of a region where information can continue moving outward without ever re-establishing a relationship with its source. The universe quietly converts dialogue into history. It transforms interaction into memory. It carries the message beyond the reach of return. Perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of all is that the signal never knows when this transformation occurs. There is no cosmic notification, no warning, no visible event. The message continues its journey exactly as before, only the future has changed. The possibility of reply has vanished. The possibility of reunion has vanished. The possibility of contact has vanished. The signal moves onward through the darkness, carrying its information into regions where the connection that gave it meaning can never be restored. And beyond that threshold lies an even larger mystery. Because if individual signals can become unreachable, then entire regions of the universe can as well. Entire galaxies, entire civilizations, entire futures, separated by an expanding gulf so vast that no message can ever bridge it again. Powerful ideas in science fiction is the dream of communication across the stars. Civilizations separated by immense distances exchange messages. Knowledge passes between worlds. Discoveries made on one planet eventually become known on another. Entire networks of intelligent societies remain connected despite the vastness of space. The idea feels reasonable because communication seems simple in principle. A message is created, the message travels, the message arrives. Distance may slow the exchange, but the connection survives. The universe may not be so accommodating. Modern cosmology suggests that there are circumstances in which entire civilizations could exist within the same universe and yet remain permanently isolated from one another. Not because they choose isolation, not because they lack technology, not because they are unaware of each other's existence. They remain isolated because the universe itself continuously increases the separation between them. This possibility changes the way we think about cosmic distance. Most people imagine distance as a challenge that can eventually be overcome. A city that once required months of travel can later be reached in hours. A planet that once seemed inaccessible can later be visited by spacecraft. History repeatedly teaches that improvements in technology reduce the importance of distance. The expanding universe introduces a very different situation. Distance is not merely waiting to be crossed. Distance is growing. The route itself changes while communication attempts to cross it. Imagine two villages located on opposite sides of a river. At first, boats move easily between them. News travels in both directions. Trade flourishes, families remain connected. The river creates separation, but not isolation. Now imagine that the river widens every day. The boats continue sailing. The people continue trying to maintain contact. Yet the water expands faster than the transportation system can adapt. Journeys become longer. Communication becomes slower. Eventually, the river becomes so vast that no boat can complete the crossing. The villages still exist. The inhabitants still live their lives. The relationship disappears. The universe creates similar situations on scales that dwarf anything found on Earth. Galaxies are not simply collections of stars. They are potential homes for countless worlds. Around those worlds could exist civilizations, cultures, technologies, and histories entirely unknown to us. Whether such civilizations actually exist remains one of the great unanswered questions in science, but the possibility alone reveals something fascinating. Even if intelligent civilizations are common, the structure of the universe may prevent many of them from ever communicating with one another. The obstacle is not intelligence. The obstacle is expansion. As space-time stretches, the distances between remote regions increase. Signals traveling between those regions face an ever-changing landscape. The farther the separation grows, the more difficult communication becomes. Eventually, there comes a point where no signal can successfully maintain the connection. The message continues moving. The gap grows faster. The exchange ends. What makes this especially remarkable is that the process does not require extraordinary distances at the beginning. Two regions can begin to be connected. They can share information. They can influence one another. Expansion alters the relationship. The future changes. Communication that was once possible becomes impossible. The universe quietly transforms neighbors into strangers. This idea becomes easier to appreciate when thinking about history rather than distance. Imagine two civilizations separated by a great ocean. For centuries they exchange messages, trade routes remain active, scientific discoveries travel between them, their histories become intertwined. Then something begins changing. The ocean expands. The voyages require longer and longer periods. Messages take decades, then centuries. Eventually the gap becomes insurmountable. The civilizations continue existing, but their futures diverge. Each writes its own history. Each develops independently. Each becomes increasingly unaware of the other's present reality. Something similar may occur throughout the cosmos. Entire regions of the universe may possess futures that no longer intersect. The civilizations within those regions, if they exist, would occupy separate domains of reality connected only by ancient information. Old messages might survive. New communication might become impossible. The relationship would shift from conversation to archaeology. One of the most fascinating consequences of this idea involves the concept of a reply. Communication feels complete because replies exist. A message sent today may receive a response tomorrow. The exchange creates a shared future. The cosmic boundary challenges this assumption. There are situations where a message can leave one region of the universe while no future reply can ever return. This means communication can become fundamentally one-sided. Information moves outward. Nothing comes back. Imagine sending a letter while knowing that the recipient may read it but can never answer. The communication still occurs, but the relationship changes profoundly. The universe appears capable of creating exactly this kind of situation. The deeper scientists study cosmic expansion, the clearer this possibility becomes. The observable universe is not a permanently connected structure. It is a dynamic network whose connections evolve over time. Some remain strong, others weaken. Still others disappear entirely. Expansion continuously redraws the map of communication. Regions once linked become isolated. Distances once manageable become insurmountable. The network fragments, not through destruction, through separation. What makes this realization especially humbling is that it may already be happening. The process is not waiting for a distant future. The universe is expanding now. The separations are growing now. The conditions that create permanent isolation already exist. Entire galaxies are moving toward futures structures disconnected from our own. Entire regions are approaching thresholds beyond which communication can never be restored. The galaxies themselves remain. The possibility of conversation fades. This transforms the way we think about the search for intelligence in the universe. People often imagine that the greatest challenge is finding another civilization. The universe suggests another challenge may be even greater: maintaining contact. A civilization could exist. Its signals could exist. Its history could unfold across billions of years. Yet expansion might prevent any meaningful exchange from ever occurring. The civilization remains real. The communication never happens. Another remarkable aspect of this process is that it occurs regardless of intention. The universe does not care whether a civilization desires contact. It does not care whether messages are important, urgent, or profound. Expansion affects every signal equally. A scientific discovery, a greeting, a warning, a record of an entire culture, all must travel through the same evolving space-time. All face the same growing separation. The cosmos treats information with complete impartiality. Perhaps the most extraordinary implication of all is that isolation does not require emptiness. Human beings often associate loneliness with absence. A person feels isolated because nobody else is present. The cosmic version of isolation is very different. A civilization could exist within a universe filled with other civilizations and still remain permanently alone. Not because others are absent, because the distances between them become part of an expanding structure that communication cannot overcome. The universe can contain abundance while creating isolation. It can contain countless possibilities while removing contact. It can contain entire histories unfolding simultaneously without allowing those histories to meet. And hidden inside this realization lies an even deeper mystery. If the universe naturally creates vast regions where conversation becomes impossible, then what happens inside those regions after communication ends? What becomes of information when there are no longer any observers capable of receiving it? Because beyond the expanding void lies a place where signals continue their journeys long after every possibility of response has disappeared. A place where information survives even when witnesses do not. Conversation is one of the most familiar experiences in human life. A thought forms in one mind and travels to another. Information moves between people. Questions receive answers. Ideas are exchanged. Every conversation depends on a simple requirement that is so obvious we rarely notice it. Both sides must remain connected. The connection does not need to be strong. It can involve spoken words, written messages, radio signals, or streams of digital information. The method can change, but the principle remains the same. A path must exist through which information can travel in both directions. Without that path, conversation ends. The universe contains a mechanism capable of removing that path on the largest scales imaginable, not by destroying the participants, not by erasing information, not by placing a physical barrier between them. Reality simply evolves in a way that makes conversation impossible. This is one of the strangest discoveries hidden inside modern cosmology. The universe naturally creates regions where communication cannot occur, even though the regions themselves remain fully real. At first, this idea feels difficult to accept because communication seems fundamental. Human beings instinctively assume that if two places exist within the same universe, some possibility of interaction must remain. The exchange may take years, centuries, or even millions of years, but the connection should survive. The cosmos reveals a different possibility. Existence and communication are not the same thing. A region can remain part of reality while becoming permanently disconnected from another region. To understand why, imagine two cities linked by a highway. Travelers move between them, news travels between them, trade flows between them. The highway creates a shared future because information and influence can move in both directions. Now imagine something unusual. The land between the cities begins expanding. The highway stretches. Travel times increase. Communication becomes slower. At first, the change seems insignificant. Messages still arrive. The connection survives, but the expansion never stops. The distance grows larger every year. Eventually, the highway becomes so long that no vehicle can complete the journey. The cities remain, the highway remains, the relationship disappears. The universe creates similar situations on cosmic scales. Galaxies are often imagined as isolated islands floating through darkness, but they are also participants in a vast network of information. Light travels between regions, radiation moves through space. Physical processes influence one another across enormous distances. This network creates what might be called the conversational structure of the cosmos. As long as information can travel successfully, regions remain connected. They remain participants in a shared reality. Expansion changes this structure. The universe grows. Distances increase. The routes available to information become more challenging. The deeper scientists studied this process, the more remarkable the consequences became. Many people imagine expansion as something that affects only objects. Galaxies move apart, clusters drift away from one another, distances increase. The more profound effect involves communication itself. Every message must cross the expanding universe. Every signal must travel through a landscape that changes while the journey occurs. The signal moves forward, space-time stretches. The future of the message becomes linked to the evolution of the cosmos. This means that communication is not merely a technological challenge, it is a cosmological one. Even the most advanced civilization imaginable cannot avoid the structure of space-time. No transmitter can negotiate with cosmic expansion. No receiver can force a connection where the geometry of reality no longer permits one. The universe itself determines which conversations remain possible. One of the most fascinating aspects of this process is that it unfolds gradually. Reality does not suddenly divide itself into isolated regions. The separation develops over time. A signal that once could complete a journey may later fail. A connection that once seemed permanent may eventually disappear. The transition often occurs so slowly that no observer directly experiences it. Yet across billions of years, the consequences become enormous. Entire regions drift into isolation. Entire futures separate. Entire histories stop influencing one another. Imagine two civilizations exchanging messages across a vast cosmic distance. For millions of years, communication continues. Scientific discoveries are shared. Observations are exchanged. Knowledge accumulates on both sides. Then expansion begins altering the relationship. Messages require longer travel times. Responses become increasingly delayed. The connection weakens. Eventually, a final message arrives. Not because either civilization chooses silence, not because one civilization disappears, because the universe itself no longer permits the continuation of the exchange. The conversation ends. The civilizations remain. This possibility reveals something extraordinary about reality. The universe can create isolation without emptiness. Human beings often associate isolation with absence. A person feels isolated because nobody else is nearby. A village feels isolated because it is far from other communities. Cosmic isolation is different. A region can be surrounded by existence and still remain permanently disconnected. Galaxies can fill the universe. Stars can shine in every direction. Civilizations can theoretically exist across immense distances. Yet conversation may still become impossible. The separation emerges from the structure of space-time rather than the absence of neighbors. This idea becomes even more remarkable when we think about the observable universe. Everything humanity has ever learned about distant space arrived through successful communication. Telescopes do not travel to remote galaxies, they receive information from them. Every image, every measurement, and every discovery depends upon messages crossing cosmic distances. Observation itself is a form of conversation. The galaxy sends light. The telescope receives it. Information moves between them. The moment information can no longer complete that journey, observation ends. The galaxy remains. The conversation does not. This is why cosmologists often describe horizons in terms of information rather than objects. The true boundary is not where existence stops. The true boundary is where communication stops. Beyond that point, reality continues independently. History unfolds. Stars form. Galaxies evolve. The universe remains active. The exchange disappears. Another remarkable consequence emerges when we consider the future. The process is ongoing. The universe continues expanding. The separations continue growing. Additional regions gradually move beyond communication. The network of cosmic conversation becomes increasingly fragmented. Not fragmented through destruction, fragmented through silence. The cosmos slowly transforms into domains that can no longer exchange information, domains that can no longer influence one another, domains that continue existing while losing the ability to share their histories. Perhaps the most profound implication is that conversation itself may be a temporary feature of the universe. Today, vast regions remain connected through light and information. Tomorrow, some of those connections will be weaker. Far in the future, many will be gone entirely. The universe does not preserve communication forever. It allows conversations to exist for a time. Then it carries regions into separate futures. This realization changes the meaning of a signal. A signal is not merely information traveling through space. It is an attempt to maintain a relationship against an expanding cosmos. Every transmission becomes part of a larger struggle between connection and separation. Every message enters a universe continuously reshaping the future of communication, and eventually, some messages cross into regions where no answer can ever return. Regions where information continues moving, even though no conversation survives. Regions where signals travel onward without witnesses, because beyond the boundaries of communication lies an even stranger domain. A place where information still exists, still moves, and still carries meaning, yet no observer remains capable of receiving it. A place where signals continue their journeys long after conversation has disappeared forever. Human beings naturally connect information with observation. A message seems meaningful because someone receives it. A book matters because someone reads it. A photograph exists to be seen. A signal becomes important because it arrives at a destination where it can be interpreted and understood. From the moment we are born, this relationship feels inseparable. Information appears to require a witness. The universe suggests something far stranger. There may be regions where information continues to exist, continues to travel, and continues to carry traces of its origin even though no observer remains capable of receiving it. This possibility challenges one of the deepest assumptions people make about communication. We often imagine a signal as a bridge connecting two points. One side sends, the other side receives. The meaning of the signal seems tied to the success of that exchange. Cosmology reveals that signals can outlive the conversations that created them. A transmission can continue long after the possibility of response has vanished. A message can survive long after every connection that once gave it purpose has disappeared. To understand why this idea is so remarkable, imagine placing a bottle into the ocean. Inside the bottle is a letter containing a piece of history. The bottle drifts away from shore and enters the open sea. At first, it remains connected to the world it left behind. Ships may encounter it, sailors may discover it. The possibility of being found remains alive. Now imagine the ocean expanding endlessly. The bottle continues floating. The letter remains inside. The information survives. Yet the sea becomes so vast that no future ship can ever reach it. The bottle still exists. The message still exists. The possibility of being read disappears. The universe may contain analogous situations on scales beyond ordinary imagination. Every signal humanity has ever transmitted into space continues outward unless it encounters matter capable of absorbing it. Radio broadcasts from the early 20th century are still traveling. Radar signals continue spreading. Messages sent toward the stars continue moving through the cosmos. Each signal carries information. Each preserves a small fragment of its origin. Each remains a physical part of reality. Yet the future of those signals depends upon the structure of the universe through which they travel. As expansion increases separation between distant regions, some signals may enter domains where no future observer can ever receive them. The message survives. The witness does not. This idea becomes especially fascinating when we consider how much of science depends upon observation. Everything humanity knows about distant galaxies comes from information reaching Earth. Telescopes collect light, instruments analyze signals. Knowledge emerges because information successively completes its journey. Observation turns information into understanding. Without observation, information still exists, but it remains unused. A beam of light crossing an empty region of space still carries information about its source. It contains evidence of where it originated and how it was produced. Yet if nothing ever intercepts that light, the information remains forever unexamined. The universe does not require a witness in order for information to exist. Reality permits messages to travel without being received. This distinction becomes even more profound when viewed across cosmic timescales. Imagine a signal leaving Earth tonight. The transmission contains words, images, scientific data, or perhaps evidence that humanity once existed. The signal spreads outward at the speed of light. Decades pass, centuries pass, millennia pass. The message continues. The civilization that created it may eventually disappear. The planet that produced it may change beyond recognition. The stars around it may evolve. Yet the signal continues its journey. In a sense, the information outlives its creators. The message becomes a traveler, carrying traces of a world that no longer exists in the form that produced it. Now imagine that signal entering a region where communication has become impossible. No reply can be returned. No future exchange can occur. No observer remains connected to the signal's path. The information survives in isolation. This introduces one of the strangest possibilities in cosmology. The universe may contain enormous amounts of information moving through regions where nobody can ever receive it. Signals continue. Witnesses disappear. The cosmos becomes a place where messages outlive conversations. One reason this idea feels unsettling is that human beings instinctively associate meaning with reception. A letter matters because someone opens it. A broadcast matters because someone listens. A discovery matters because someone learns from it. The universe operates according to a broader principle. A signal does not cease to exist simply because nobody receives it. The information remains embedded within the physical structure of the signal itself. The message carries its history regardless of whether it is observed. In this sense, reality preserves information even when communication fails. The cosmos becomes a vast archive containing countless messages traveling through darkness. Some originated from stars, some originated from galaxies, some may have originated from worlds and civilizations. Many will never encounter a receiver, yet they continue. Another fascinating aspect of this idea involves the relationship between information and time. Human communication usually unfolds within short periods. A message is sent, a response follows. The exchange remains part of a shared present. Cosmic communication behaves differently. A signal can travel for billions of years. Entire eras of cosmic history may pass while the message remains in transit. Galaxies evolve. Stars are born and die. Planetary systems change. The signal continues. The message becomes detached from the age that created it. It carries the past into regions that belong to entirely different futures. This means that information can become a kind of historical artifact drifting through space-time, not stored in a museum, not preserved in a library, preserved within the motion of the signal itself. A record moving endlessly through the universe. The deeper implication is even more extraordinary. If information can continue without witnesses, then reality is larger than observation. Human beings often imagine the universe through the lens of experience. What matters is what can be seen, measured, detected, or understood. The existence of witnessless information suggests a much larger picture. Reality contains processes that continue regardless of observation. Messages travel regardless of reception. Histories persist regardless of recognition. The universe does not pause when communication ends. It simply carries information forward into regions where observation no longer follows. This realization changes how we think about isolation. Isolation does not necessarily mean emptiness. A region may contain signals, histories, and information, while remaining completely disconnected from any observer capable of interpreting them. The information exists, the witness is absent, the message survives. The conversation does not. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of all is that this process may be occurring on an immense scale throughout the cosmos. Countless photons travel through intergalactic space. Countless signals cross expanding regions of the universe. Countless pieces of information continue their journeys without ever finding a destination. The cosmos becomes a place filled with messages moving through darkness, long after every possibility of response has disappeared. A place where information remains real even when understanding is impossible. A place where signals continue their silent voyages through an ever-expanding universe. And hidden within that realization lies another mystery. If information can survive without witnesses, then perhaps entire regions of the universe can as well. Entire domains where communication has ended. Entire cosmic territories cut off from every possible exchange. Entire islands of reality surrounded not by water, but by distances that no signal can ever cross again. Places that reveal why the universe may contain regions of permanent isolation unlike anything found on Earth. When people hear the word island, they usually imagine a piece of land surrounded by water. An island may be small or large, tropical or frozen, inhabited or empty, but it remains connected to the rest of the world in an important way. Ships can reach it, aircraft can fly to it, messages can travel to and from it. The water creates separation, but not complete isolation. The universe contains something far stranger. It creates islands that cannot be reached by any ship, crossed by any traveler, or connected through any future exchange of information. These are not islands surrounded by oceans. They are islands surrounded by expanding space-time itself. What makes them remarkable is that they are not temporary features of the cosmos. They are not isolated because technology is limited. They are not isolated because civilizations have failed to make contact. They are isolated because reality itself evolves in a way that separates entire regions from one another. This is one of the most extraordinary consequences of the expanding universe. The cosmos naturally creates domains that become permanently disconnected. To understand why, imagine a vast network of cities connected by roads. The roads allow movement. Goods travel between communities. Information spreads. The network functions because every location remains linked to the others through routes that can be crossed. Now imagine something unusual begins happening. The land between the cities slowly expands. Roads become longer. Travel times increase. Communication becomes more difficult. At first, the changes seem insignificant. The network remains intact. People adapt. New vehicles are built. Better infrastructure compensates for the growing distances. But the expansion continues. The roads lengthen faster than transportation improves. Some cities become harder to reach. Others become almost impossible to reach. Eventually, entire sections of the network lose contact with one another. The cities still exist. The roads still exist. The connections disappear. The universe behaves in a surprisingly similar way. On the largest scales, galaxies are connected through the possibility of communication. Light travels between regions. Information crosses space. Physical events can influence distant locations. The observable universe functions as a vast network linked together by the movement of information. Expansion changes that network. As space-time stretches, distances increase. The paths available to communication become more challenging. The connections weaken. Some survive, others do not. Over immense spans of time, the cosmos gradually divides itself into regions that can no longer exchange information. These regions become the cosmic equivalent of islands. Not islands surrounded by water, islands surrounded by separation. One reason this idea feels so unusual is that human intuition treats isolation as a local phenomenon. A remote village is isolated because mountains block access. A distant island is isolated because oceans stand in the way. Cosmic isolation emerges differently. No barrier needs to exist. Nothing blocks the route. The route simply becomes impossible. The destination remains visible in principle. The possibility of arrival disappears. This distinction is important because it reveals that isolation can arise without walls. Reality itself becomes the source of separation. Imagine standing in a field while watching another person walk away. Under ordinary circumstances, you can follow them. The distance may increase, but the possibility of catching up remains. Now imagine the ground between you begins expanding. The farther apart you become, the faster the separation grows. Eventually, no amount of effort can reduce the gap. The other person remains real. The possibility of meeting again vanishes. This is the essence of permanent cosmic isolation. The universe creates gaps that grow faster than communication can cross them. The deeper scientists studied cosmic expansion, the more significant this realization became. For much of history, people assumed the universe formed a single connected stage. Every star, every galaxy, and every region of space belonged to the same accessible reality. The distances were enormous, but the structure remained unified. Modern cosmology suggests a more complex picture. Reality may remain one universe while containing regions that no longer participate in the same future. The distinction is subtle but profound. The islands are not separate universes. They are not alternate dimensions. They are not disconnected realms existing outside known physics. They belong to the same cosmos. Yet they cannot communicate. They cannot exchange information. They cannot influence one another. Their histories continue independently. This creates one of the most fascinating possibilities in science. Imagine two civilizations existing in different regions of the universe. Both study the stars. Both seek knowledge. Both attempt to understand reality. At one time, communication between them may have been possible. Signals could travel. Information could cross the distance. A shared future remained open. Then expansion changes the relationship. The regions drift farther apart. Communication becomes increasingly difficult. Messages require longer journeys. Replies become delayed. Eventually, the final exchange occurs. Not because either civilization chooses silence. Not because one civilization disappears. Because the universe itself removes the possibility of conversation. The civilizations remain. The connection does not. Each becomes an island. This idea transforms the way we think about loneliness on a cosmic scale. Human loneliness usually involves the absence of companionship. A person feels alone because nobody else is nearby. Cosmic loneliness operates differently. A region can be surrounded by countless galaxies and still become isolated. Existence remains abundant. Communication disappears. The universe can contain immense richness while creating permanent separation. Another remarkable aspect of these cosmic islands is that they continue evolving after isolation occurs. A common misconception is that disconnected regions somehow become frozen or inactive. The opposite is true. Stars continue forming. Galaxies continue colliding. Black holes continue growing. Planetary systems continue evolving. Time continues carrying events forward. The island remains fully alive. Only the exchange with other regions has ended. This means that enormous portions of reality may spend most of cosmic history unfolding beyond every possibility of contact. Their stories continue, their futures develop, their histories expand. Yet none of those events ever become part of our experience. The universe preserves their existence while removing their accessibility. The deeper implication becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Human beings often imagine the observable universe as the primary stage upon which cosmic history unfolds. In reality, the observable universe may be only one connected region within a far larger structure. Beyond its horizons may lie countless domains following their own trajectories, each isolated, each self-contained, each permanently separated from others by the expansion of space-time. The cosmos becomes less like a single conversation and more like an archipelago of distant islands, not islands scattered across water, islands scattered across an expanding reality, each carrying its own history, each carrying its own future, each drifting farther from the others with every passing age of the universe. Perhaps the most astonishing aspect of all is that this process requires no catastrophe. No explosion creates the islands. No destruction creates the islands. No cosmic disaster divides the universe. Isolation emerges naturally from the ordinary evolution of space-time. The universe quietly produces separation simply by growing, and hidden within that realization lies another mystery. If reality contains countless islands of permanent isolation, then what exactly fills the immense expanse between them? What is the vast medium through which every signal, every photon, and every message must travel before either reaching its destination or disappearing beyond contact forever? Because between every connected region and every isolated domain stretches an unseen ocean far larger than any sea ever crossed on Earth. An ocean through which all information must pass, and one that ultimately determines the fate of every signal ever sent into the cosmos. When people think about space, they often imagine emptiness. The image is familiar. Planets float through darkness. Stars shine across enormous distances. Galaxies drift through vast regions that appear almost completely empty. Between one object and another seems to lie nothing at all. This picture is understandable, but it hides something important. The universe is not simply a collection of objects separated by empty gaps. Every signal, every photon, every radio transmission, every pulse of information must travel through a vast medium that is far more complex than ordinary intuition suggests. In a sense, all communication in the cosmos takes place across an unseen ocean. Unlike the oceans of Earth, this ocean contains no water. It has no waves crashing against shores, no storms move across its surface, no ships sail through it, yet it is larger than every ocean that has ever existed. It stretches between stars. It stretches between galaxies. It stretches between entire regions of the observable universe. Every message must cross it. Every signal must survive within it. Every attempt at communication depends upon it. To understand why this idea matters, imagine an explorer standing on a coastline thousands of years ago. Looking toward the horizon, the explorer sees only open water. The ocean appears empty, yet hidden beneath the surface are currents, temperatures, ecosystems, and forces that shape every journey across it. A ship's destination depends not only on where it wants to go, but also on the nature of the ocean through which it travels. The cosmos works in a surprisingly similar way. A signal does not simply move from one location to another. Its journey unfolds within the structure of space-time itself. And space-time is not passive. It evolves. It expands. It shapes the future of every message traveling through it. This realization represents one of the most profound shifts in modern cosmology. For centuries, people imagined space as a fixed stage. Objects moved across it while the stage itself remained unchanged. Communication seemed straightforward because the background never participated in the process. The 20th century revealed a different reality. Space is dynamic. The universe grows. Distances change. The medium through which information travels is continuously transforming. This means that every signal is navigating more than distance. It is navigating the evolution of the cosmos. Imagine sending a message across an ocean whose currents gradually change direction while the message is in transit. The destination remains the same, but the environment through which the journey unfolds becomes increasingly important. The universe creates analogous conditions for information. A photon emitted by a distant galaxy begins its journey through a cosmos that will continue expanding for billions of years. The signal travels. The universe changes. The path itself evolves. One of the most fascinating consequences of this process is that the unseen ocean of space-time can influence communication information without ever touching the signal directly. The photon continues moving at the speed of light. The radio wave continues spreading outward. The information remains intact. What changes is the relationship between different regions of the universe. The ocean grows, the distances expand, the future of communication shifts. This distinction is subtle but essential. The universe does not need to stop a signal in order to isolate it. The cosmos simply alters the geometry through which the signal travels. The message survives. The connection changes. Another way to appreciate this idea is to think about the age of the universe itself. Every signal occupies a specific moment in cosmic history. A transmission leaving Earth today enters a universe that is approximately 13.8 billion years old. The conditions it encounters are not identical to those that existed billions of years ago. The cosmic ocean changes with time. A photon emitted shortly after the birth of the universe traveled through a different cosmos than a photon emitted today. The expansion rate was different. The structure of matter was different. The distribution of galaxies was different. Information always travels through a living universe rather than a static one. This makes every signal part of a much larger story. The message carries information about its source, but it also becomes a witness to the changing structure of reality. As it moves, the cosmos evolves around it. The signal and the universe participate in the same unfolding history. One of the most remarkable examples of this process involves light from distant galaxies. Astronomers often observe photons that began their journeys billions of years ago. Those photons crossed unimaginable distances before reaching Earth. During that time, entire generations of stars were born and died. Galaxies collided and changed shape. Cosmic structures evolved, yet the signal continued. The information survived. The journey endured. The photon crossed an ocean larger than anything human beings can easily comprehend. But not every journey succeeds. The unseen ocean contains more than distance. It contains expansion. It contains horizons. It contains regions where communication gradually becomes impossible. A signal may travel forever without reaching certain destinations because the ocean itself changes too dramatically. The message keeps moving. The separation grows. The relationship disappears. This is one of the reasons the cosmic ocean differs from every ocean on Earth. An earthly ocean may be difficult to cross, but its size remains relatively fixed. The cosmic ocean grows while the voyage is taking place. The traveler is not merely crossing distance. The traveler is crossing a distance that continuously redefines itself. This creates extraordinary consequences for the future of communication. Imagine two distant civilizations attempting to exchange messages across billions of light years. Even if both possess advanced technology, the expanding universe becomes part of the conversation. The signals must travel through an ocean that never stops changing. The routes become longer. The separations become larger. The conditions become increasingly difficult. Eventually, the ocean itself may prevent communication from continuing. Not through hostility, not through destruction, simply through growth. The universe becomes so vast that conversation can no longer survive. Another fascinating aspect of this unseen ocean is that it contains the history of everything. Every signal passing through it carries evidence of its origin. Light from stars contains information about stellar interiors. Radiation from galaxies contains information about cosmic evolution. Messages from Earth contain information about human civilization. The ocean becomes a repository of journeys, a place where countless streams of information travel simultaneously. Most never meet. Most continue independently, yet together they form an invisible network spanning the cosmos. This realization changes the way we think about isolation. Isolation is not merely the absence of neighbors. Isolation is a consequence of the ocean between them. The larger and more dynamic the ocean becomes, the harder communication becomes. The fate of every signal is ultimately tied to the nature of the medium through which it travels, and the medium itself continues evolving. The deepest lesson hidden inside this idea is that communication is never just about sender and receiver, there is always a third participant. The space between them, the route connecting them, the unseen ocean carrying every message. On Earth, that ocean may be air, water, or technology. On cosmic scales, it is space-time itself, a vast and expanding medium through which every signal must pass. A medium so enormous that it determines whether communication survives or disappears. A medium that shapes the destiny of every message ever sent into the universe. And once we understand the nature of this unseen ocean, a final question emerges. What does the fate of all these signals reveal about the true size of the cosmos? Because if communication can fail, not through distance alone, but through the very structure of reality, then perhaps the greatest lesson hidden inside every signal is not where it is going. The greatest lesson is what its journey tells us about the unimaginable scale of the universe through which it travels. We have followed something that seems almost insignificant. A signal leaves Earth, a radio transmission escapes into space, a pulse of information moves outward at the speed of light. At first glance, it appears to be a simple event. A message begins traveling through the cosmos. Yet the deeper we followed that message, the more it revealed. The signal became more than a transmission. It became a guide, a way of understanding something much larger than communication itself. Because the fate of every signal ultimately points toward one of the most astonishing discoveries in modern cosmology. The universe is far larger than our intuition allows us to imagine. Human beings naturally measure size through experience. A city feels large because it takes time to cross. A continent feels large because it contains enormous distances. Even the Earth appears vast because a single lifetime is not enough to explore every part of it. When we look at the night sky, we often extend this same intuition to the cosmos. We see stars scattered across darkness and imagine an immense but understandable universe. The distances seem enormous, yet they still feel like distances that belong to the same connected reality. The journey of a signal tells a different story. A signal leaving Earth does not merely cross space. It encounters the structure of reality itself, and that structure reveals that the universe is not simply large. It is large in a way that changes the meaning of connection. Consider how humanity first began sending detectable signals into space. Early radio broadcasts spread outward from Earth in all directions. News reports, music, conversations, scientific discoveries, and countless other fragments of human history escaped into the darkness. Many people imagined those signals moving endlessly through an open cosmos. The image seemed straightforward. The message travels. The universe receives it. The journey continues. Modern cosmology forces us to look more carefully. The signal does continue, but the universe through which it travels is not static. Space expands, distances increase, regions drift apart. The future relationship between different parts of reality changes. Suddenly, the signal becomes more than a message. It becomes a probe, a test of how connected the cosmos truly is. And the answer is surprising. The cosmos is not completely connected. There are limits. There are horizons. There are regions where communication cannot survive. This realization reveals something profound about scale. Most people think size is measured by distance alone. The universe suggests another measure. A universe becomes larger not only when it contains more space, but when increasing portions of that space can never participate in the same conversation. Imagine two maps. The first map covers 1,000 miles, but every location remains connected by roads. The second map covers the same area, yet vast sections are permanently inaccessible. Both maps contain equal distance. The second map feels larger because access has disappeared. The universe behaves in a similar way. Reality exceeds communication. Reality exceeds observation. Reality exceeds participation. The signal reveals this truth because it eventually encounters the limits of connection. One of the most remarkable consequences of this idea is that the observable universe is not the same thing as the universe itself. The observable universe represents the region from which information has successfully reached us. Everything beyond that remains outside direct communication. This distinction may seem subtle, but it changes the way we think about existence. Imagine standing in a lighthouse at night. The beam illuminates part of the ocean. Ships become visible within the light. Waves can be observed. Details emerge from the darkness. Yet the illuminated region is not the ocean. It is merely the portion currently visible. The ocean continues far beyond the beam. The observable universe functions in much the same way. Information defines what we can see. Communication defines what we can know. Reality extends beyond both. The fate of our signals reminds us of this constantly. Every message moving outward eventually encounters a cosmos that is larger than the network of communication itself. A cosmos where information can travel without ever reaching certain destinations. A cosmos where regions continue existing despite becoming inaccessible. A cosmos where connection has limits. This is where the true scale of the universe begins to emerge. The scale is not measured only in billions of light years. It is measured in disconnected futures. Imagine two regions of space separated by such enormous expansion that no future exchange of information remains possible. The regions still belong to the same universe. The same physical laws operate in both. The same cosmic history contributed to their formation, yet their futures never meet. Their stories continue separately. Their histories unfold independently. The existence of such regions tells us something extraordinary. Reality is larger than shared experience. The universe contains more than any observer can ever participate in. The signal reveals this because it eventually reaches the edge of communication, while reality itself continues beyond that edge. Another remarkable lesson emerges when we think about the future. Human civilization often imagines exploration as a process without end. New technologies appear, new discoveries follow, boundaries retreat. The signal suggests a more complicated picture. Some boundaries do not retreat, some horizons remain. No matter how advanced a civilization becomes, the structure of space-time continues shaping what can and cannot remain connected. The universe preserves regions beyond access. The signal can travel. The conversation cannot continue. This means the ultimate size of the cosmos is not merely a matter of physical dimensions. It is a matter of unreachable existence. The universe contains more than can be contacted, more than can be observed, more than can be explored, more than can be influenced. The signal becomes a witness to that reality. As it travels outward, it reveals the difference between existence and accessibility. Those two concepts often appear identical from a human perspective. The cosmos shows that they are not. Something can exist without ever becoming part of our future. Something can remain real without ever entering our experience. Something can continue unfolding beyond every possible exchange of information. This is the deepest lesson hidden inside the journey of every signal humanity has ever sent. The signal begins as a declaration, a statement that we are here, a fragment of history escaping into space. Yet as it travels, it becomes evidence of something much larger. Evidence that reality extends far beyond every network of communication. Evidence that the universe is not defined by what can be reached. Evidence that the cosmos contains domains forever beyond contact. The signal continues. The universe grows. The separation deepens. And somewhere far beyond the last possible reply, beyond the final conversation, beyond every future exchange of information, reality continues unfolding on a scale so immense that communication itself can no longer describe it. That is the true lesson hidden within the fate of our signals. They do not merely reveal where our messages go. They reveal how small the connected part of reality may actually be. They reveal that the universe is not simply vast. It is vast beyond communication, vast beyond exploration, vast beyond participation. Most astonishing of all, vast beyond anything a single civilization could ever hope to fully know. The signal leaves Earth carrying a tiny piece of humanity. The universe answers with a much larger truth. Reality is greater than every message sent through it, and most of that reality may forever remain beyond the reach of any signal that could ever be sent. Every signal ever sent carries a small piece of its origin. A voice, an image, a discovery, a moment in history. Once released into the cosmos, those messages begin a journey that no one can fully follow. Some will travel through space for billions of years, some will cross regions humanity will never see, and some may already be entering parts of the universe that can never answer back. The existence of such places changes the meaning of communication itself. It reminds us that the cosmos is not a single connected stage, but a vast and growing expanse where separation is written into the fabric of reality. Somewhere in that immense darkness, our signals continue onward, carrying traces of our existence into a future that will forever remain beyond our reach.